Hello everyone and welcome to this episode, the adaptive one of the Women Talking About Learning podcast. I'm Andrew Jacobs. Over recent years we've all had to adapt in some way or another. For example, during COVID. And now with AI, adaptation isn't just an option, it's a necessity. Recognizing the importance of adaptability can transform your approach to challenges. And to discuss this further, we have two great guests. Our first guest is Dr. Christine Janssen. Christine is an immersive learning expert and AI learning strategist. She is the founder and CEO of Edstutia, an immersive learning platform and consultancy, as well as a former business school professor in New York City. Our second guest is Sarah Campbell. Sarah is a marketing strategist and founder of Studio3 Creative, a Western Canada-based consultancy with over 13 years of experience guiding small, women-led businesses towards scalable progress. After years of manually aligning brand, audience and voice for clients, Sarah recognized a market gap and engineered a proprietary AI content system. This is an awesome conversation. Recorded in May 2026, this is Women Talking About Learning. This is Christine and Sarah talking about adaptation.
Alrighty, here we are. Lots of things to talk about with women and learning and this awesome topic of adapting today. My name is Chris Janssen. I am tapping in from New York City today, and Sarah Campbell is joining in. Sarah, where are you? What time is it? We're both waking up.
I'm joining from Calgary, Alberta, in Canada, and it is 7 a.m. and I am running off of maybe 3 hours of sleep. So we super excited to be here, super ready to adapt to the lack of sleep and chat about adapting. I think it's going to be a great conversation.
Perfect. So I know what drew me to this conversation on adapting, but actually going to throw it out to you first to say, what is it that you raise your hand and you're like, I want to talk about this because this is super interesting. I'll let you go first and then I'll jump in as well. Because to me, this is a very relevant, timely, interesting topic within that intersection of women and learning. So over to you, Sarah.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so for me, I work in a really creative field. I work with marketing and I work with women entrepreneurs who are out there creating something new every day, and they're like launching these new things out into the world. And to me, it's like the absolute intersection of everything I do comes down to how do you adapt to what's happening now? How do you change directions? How do you pivot on the fly? How do you do something different? I had someone tell me a little while ago, and it totally changed my perspective on things like AI and technology adaptation and trying new things and learning new things. And they were like, creativity and the creative field has always been the first to adopt new technologies, to jump in on the newest craze, to take something, harness it, and make it into something beautiful and new. If you go back to cave paintings, like a creative was determined to communicate something, and that was the invention at the time. So yeah, for me, it just goes hand in hand with the creative field and developing, your creativity and your approach to how you're going to solve problems and embrace new things in the world. Excuse me, sorry. I'm like, I need 3 more shots of espresso. What about you, Chris? What brought you on for this episode?
What's really funny is, so I am a female entrepreneur, and I totally understand that as an entrepreneur, you have to pivot all the time. And so I'm living that, but I'm also helping our clients do that as well. So I look at like pivoting and adapting as, hand in hand. It's being nimble. It's being open to change. It's being willing to let go of something and look at something in a totally different way, even if it's scary, unknown, novel, all that. But I actually raised my hand for this particular podcast because I'm one of these weirdos that I love disruption. I love radical change. And I understand that most people can't stand that. It's so scary to them. But to me, that's when that's exciting. That's when you evolve as a person. You're evolving your business. And anybody who sits on their laurels and just rests with the status quo, you just render yourself becoming irrelevant and outdated really quickly. And boy, do I see this resistance to change out there. My target audience is corporate learning and development folks, as well as faculty in higher ed. And I can get more into my business in a little bit. But there is such within the world of AI. Come on, this is the hot topic these days, and how it's disrupting everything.
I know. It's like, how long till AI shows up?
Yeah. Yeah. Super, it's in your face. And it's really interesting how a lot of people are just kind of, crossing their arms, digging their heels in the ground and like, let's just wait for this one to blow over. I don't want to I don't want to learn or change or adapt. And that blows my mind because again, I find it really exciting and fun, but that is such a huge challenge for me right now with my clients. Internally with my own team, I'm like, all right, this is fun. But I do understand that this is a really difficult topic for people, which makes this an extra exciting conversation for us. Yeah.
Absolutely.
This is, adapting it's all about, it's change management, right? But if we're going to kind of target the topic of AI and how it's just shaking everything up and reshaping every single person's job, I don't care what industry you're in, we have to return to kind of some basic change management techniques and tactics, but kind of in an updated, a little like a new flavor because of where we are in 2026. We can't rely on old models that people have been using for 20, 30, 40 years. And so there's just a fresh new way of looking at things. And it's a little scary for people. But I look at this as growth. And so I'm very challenged right now to, again, working with folks in higher ed to adapt and adopt new technologies, new ways of thinking about their roles, about learning, and getting away from the fear and negativity and the skepticism of what AI is doing to their jobs, to institutions, to the student learning experience. Right? This is part of what I'm doing is trying to change that narrative from the negative to the positive and getting them to be excited too. That's a whole story. That is a whole story. Who are you? You said you were targeting female entrepreneurs, yeah?
Yes.
And what are the main things for you right now? Are you also dealing with that AI adoption and maybe some other challenges? I mean, I'm your girl. I'm your audience. So curious to hear, what you're finding with your target audience.
Yeah, for sure. We work with majority women entrepreneurs who are either starting out or they're in that small business to medium sort of business phase. And a big chunk of what I do is marketing, coaching, and sort of business scaling coaching. And of course, AI is coming up constantly. And so much of one of the main courses that I teach is about new technology adoption in your organization in order to streamline processes, to make your operations smoother, to approach things in a new way. And so much of how we teach that course is about, yes, it's scary. It's acknowledging that fear, acknowledging that negativity you were talking about. There are obviously, and of course, downsides to the adoption of this technology. But I also think it's like there was a negative impact to the adoption of cars, but there was also a massive positive one. And I think it's one of those things where it's like, once that genie is out of the bottle, like that's it. Like, it's adapt and get with it or get left behind. And I want to talk to people about that. I want to be like, yes, there's negatives, but there's also this new wave of opportunity where lots of people, everything from being able to, being dyslexic and having an AI be able to read content to you so that you don't have to worry about it. And now you're able to operate so much quicker, or maybe it's something like making things that normally would have cost so much money to someone who's just starting out. Suddenly it's cheaper and it's affordable and they can do it and they can approach it. Or you can't have a huge team yet, but you're able to adopt things so you're not working, 16-hour days, which we know for female entrepreneurs is so much harder to be able to do. There's that like grinded out mentality that I always say comes from the male dominated side of that of entrepreneurship, where it's like, oh yeah, I grinded it out. I worked for 20 hours a day for the first 6 years of my business in order to create this unicorn. And you're like, well, I can almost guarantee you there was someone else in your life helping pick up some of that slack so that you could do that. Right. And now I'm like, now for women, there's this chance to, have someone else booking meetings, have something else, polishing emails, creating things and doing admin and operational assistance just to cut down on the amount of time so you can still do it and be there in all the different aspects of your life without this like grinded out mentality being the guiding way. And I think that's such a cool side benefit, a major benefit of AI and the adoption of new technology and just being open to that change is, of course, there's always going to be negative sides. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that they're there. Of course, there is an environmental impact, there is human and an IP impact, but there also is a really positive human impact in a lot of different ways and from a lot of different approaches. And, if we don't focus on the positive, then it's a lot harder to make that jump to try something new and to adapt to the changing times, I guess is the main point of what I'm what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how about yourself? So you said you talk a lot in higher education and that your kind of approach to this is and to adoption. I love how I've changed it from adapting to adoption.
Yeah, well, they're hand in hand.
They're so close together, right? I mean, they're one letter apart. I don't know. They're only a
Mhm.
couple of letters apart. They're not even worlds apart when it comes to what it means. But how are you seeing it there?
Yeah, agreed. Oh boy. So, just for some context, I used to be a business school professor for 12 years, and then 6 years ago I left to start my own ed tech company, which is Edstutia. And just like I said before, out of like by definition, as an entrepreneur, you have to constantly pivot and adapt, paying attention to changes in the external marketplace that are out of your control, but you got to pay attention, just like AI, right? But what are the pain points of your target audience? What are the problems? Those change. So we've had to change a lot over the years. And I don't look at it as, oh, that didn't work. We failed at that. Well, let's try this. Let's try that. It's not wishy-washy. It is really very deliberate and very strategic, and how you have to pay attention to where the issues and problems are, like I said. So I built an entire platform in virtual reality that looked like a campus with all these different venues and learner functionality, data capture and all that. Big. This is when, Facebook changed their name to Meta, and it was like, wow, this is like the metaverse and everything. And I'm still very bullish on the possibilities of learning in this different dimension using VR. Love. But that seemed to be more of a nice to have than a must have. With AI, it's different. This is like, you better get in the game or you are going to become irrelevant, outdated, or out of business. So thankfully, we've got the AI wind at our back. So now the conversation is, yes, this is not just a nice to have thing to integrate into your existing curriculum or assessments and stuff. Like, how do you want to use this technology? So AI now is OMG. We've got to figure out how to do this. People are just overwhelmed with all the tools and apps out there. And because this is so new, there's no playbook out there that says this is how you integrate AI in your organization or into your curriculum. They're just not. And so anyway, we've adapted along the way, and we're in the midst of another shift because AI over the last year or two, God, you can feel it. You can see it. How it went from, oh, ChatGPT, that's interesting. Let's dabble in that too. Or, it was like sit around and wait and see what's going to happen to like, OMG. I felt it even when we flipped the calendar into 2026 that people were like, we better start taking some action rather than sitting around and talking about things. So I do see the interest in wanting to embrace more AI, but boy, there's still so much hesitancy and skepticism out there. And so part of the way that we've pivoted is that, yes, we still have this platform that has now integrated AI into it. And yes, we have technology that we're selling, this platform. But I realized the pain point is less about, because there's so many tools out there that they're overwhelmed. We're taking it down a notch and really addressing the pain point for them. Our target audience is, I don't know which tools to use. I don't even know how to use it. My students are cheating. I'm looking for direction from senior leadership. They don't have direction. We don't have any governance policies. What are the standards? All that is so gray that it's like, all right, let's address that problem first and foremost. So we're coming up with new consulting processes and models to help organizations adapt, and some new workshops for faculty that are, and I'm not trying to do a plug here, but I'm just saying this is how we're adapting.
Yeah.
Because we have to help our audience adapt. And it's at a fundamental level. It's like, why are we doing this? If people don't understand why should we integrate AI, why should we adapt? And if they don't have agency in that process and the change, there will continue to be that resistance. So nobody likes to be told what to do, especially faculty, my target audience. Understandably so. There's all that academic freedom. So I'm trying to put myself in their shoes and say, what is it that is really hard, challenging, disruptive, in the negative part of everything of their jobs being reshaped because of AI, and trying to turn it into a positive. Because that's, I mean, I don't know if you you can tell, I have a lot of energy, a lot of excitement, very positive about this change. And so I'm trying to bottle that up and be able to share that with others and help them to get on board. Not easy, but I just want to share how we're adapting. We have to, so we can in turn help others who are adapting. And I'm saying this all within the world of AI because that's what people care about right now. So that's my take on it. And again, how we have to change. One quick thing before I forget, it's interesting when we went through COVID and how everybody had to adapt, had to change. And it was amazing what we could do virtually. And what is so frustrating is that so many organizations, institutions, industries, people just want to revert back to what they were doing before COVID rather than taking that change, that momentum, and keep moving forward and continue adapting. That drives me cray cray. So I see that a lot too. I don't know if you've seen that in some of the the people you work with, but yikes.
With the backwards slide.
Yes.
I know. I was talking about this with someone the other day where we were like, for me, it's the force back into the office that a lot of big businesses are doing. Where you're
Right.
like,
Right.
it becomes so much more accessible for so many people, especially, again, I come back to this a lot, but especially women in the workplace. There's a level of accessibility that comes from being able to work from home and being able to work maybe more flexible hours rather than working in an office space that, that adaptation is now just being this like slowly rolled back from people. And it's interesting because it's like, we have to sometimes adapt both ways, and certain adaptions are a little bit more painful than other ones.
Yeah.
So as you were talking, you were kind of mentioning that you think that it's important for there to be a why behind adapting. I kind of love that idea. I would love if you could just expand on that a little bit more, or maybe tell me about one of the really big whys behind a new change or an adoption or a pivot that you've done, and how the why kind of led the way. I think that's such a powerful idea, that there always has to be a why, and finding that why is so important in helping you like make that change happen really effectively.
Isn't that the truth? Because we could talk about the what. What do we need to do? When are we going to do it? Right? Who's going to be responsible for X? I mean, all that stuff is still being figured out. And how are we going to do it? We don't know. But if people don't understand, and I'm going to use my audience of higher ed, if they don't understand why they're supposed to embrace this technology, why they need to adapt, why they have to change how they teach, then this just falls on deaf ears. And that resistance, it just kind of gets even stronger because, again, nobody likes to be told what to do. Help people understand. So I'll give you this example for higher ed. Why are we doing this? Why do we need to embrace and integrate AI? Well, it's no longer about you as meaning the educators. It's about the students. Why are we changing? We have to prepare these students for this crazy new world that they're entering that is being reshaped by AI. If we don't do that, how are we helping them? What are they paying for? Why are they here? So that's a tough one for them to think about. But I keep saying that you have to remove you, meaning faculty, remove yourself from the equation, put your student in the center, and then ask that question, why are we doing this? And there's a lot of institutions that are struggling with low enrollment and all sorts of baloney here in the United States, losing funding and all sorts of stuff. If you want to keep your doors open, if you want to keep enrollment up, if you want to keep your brand relevant and attract students, because you are educating them for jobs of the future. You are educating them for really what's next versus what you've always been teaching for the last 20, 30, 40 years. That doesn't work anymore. So I keep, I want them to understand the why. You've got to remain relevant and competitive. And, one of the things that really stinks is, if you've got people who are tenured and they'll never lose their jobs. They're just sitting there and they're complacent and they're like, I don't need to change. There's no incentive for me to change, which is another topic. So why should I? And I really want them to again, step back to understand that why. And hopefully that will inspire them. If they really are there to serve students and prepare them, then that's like deep in the belly, the why am I here? Why am I in this profession? So I also want them to change their shift our mindset from, oh, they're cheating, this and that. And it's like, you know what? That's going to require you to completely reshape how you teach, to leverage AI and to better set them up to be those critical thinkers and problem solvers, and that they can't just use AI to answer everything. AI doesn't learn for you. You can get information, but lots of information, but it doesn't learn for you. And so this is where I'm really trying to get those learning leaders to rethink and reshape how they teach, so the students benefit the most. And you can plug and play that into an organization. Like, are you L&D folks? Are you preparing your employees to be adaptive for digital transformation? It's just that, like, this stuff is just it's omnipresent. It's inevitable. And so this is what I'm taking on right now to help people understand the why. I hope that helps.
Yeah. I love that. And I love how different it is from organization and industry to industry, but there's something so core at the center of it that I think comes back to just like being humans. Like, we need to understand the why behind something to really connect with it as a concept, and to be able to, you have to really connect with something as a concept to be able to take it on, to adopt it, to pivot, to make that change happen. It's funny because in marketing and when I'm working with clients and stuff, whether or not it's from a change management perspective or a growth perspective, or we're just talking about, should I have a profile on Instagram? Everything I go back to, and I have like the nickname as being like the why person. It's like, why are you doing that? Like, so many people start to do these things and they come at it from sort of a checklist perspective, where it's like, okay, well, AI is popular, so we have to have AI now.
Wow.
TikTok is popular, so we have to be on TikTok. Somebody told me they went viral doing this, so we have to do that now. And it's just like this checklist of like, these are all the things that we have to do. But if you don't really hone in on the why, is your audience there? Is there a valuable opportunity for you here? Is there a way that you can adopt it that answers a particular problem or a question or a support? Then I think you can also end up trying to adapt in a way that doesn't feed you as a company. I think of, for instance, in the adoption of AI, there's a lot of companies, especially in the IT space, that when AI started growing in popularity, they were like, the mandate across the company now is that you're going to be using AI. You're going to be using as many tokens as you can. We're going to track, token usage, and we want to see like token usage through the roof. They have like $1 million spend on AI, and then they turn around and like, well, what are we actually getting from that adoption? Like, what are we actually getting here other than we're burning out team members and we're getting what we could call spaghetti code and it's not where it needs to be, because they're not doing it to answer a problem. They're not doing it to fix a why. They're doing it because they're scared of being left behind. And I think that that's where those changes become, and understanding your why becomes such an important part of making that pivot and making adoption happen, is because if you're not doing it to answer a problem, if you're not doing it to solve a question, to make something better, then, well, like, why are you doing it? Just because has never been, I think, a strong enough answer to get you really good results where you're like, I'm doing it because I'm scared. That's never the way to make a decision that's gonna, empower you as a company, even empower you as a person. That's what, I mean, my mom always said, like, never make a decision out of fear. If you can do all sorts of wild things in your life, you can do whatever seems right to you in the moment, but just don't make decisions out of fear. And I think that's
I love that.
so relevant when it comes to any kind of adoption or pivoting or change or anything, is like, as long as you're not making the decision out of fear, you're pursuing a why, you're pursuing a problem, you're pursuing a solution, I think it becomes just that much stronger.
Thanks, Mom. I'm going to leverage that.
That's my 2 takes on the why.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And your mom's spot on. Give her some props.
Right? I gotta shout out the mom, right? I mean, it was only Mother's Day a few days ago, so.
That's perfect. As I'm listening to you, it's like, I love this too. I think we're getting to kind of the nucleus of adapting, right? Understand the why. The other thing that I think of as organizations and people are adapting, it's like, we can't be short-sighted with this change. Like, for example, with AI, where you take some organizations, they're like, whoa, everybody's using ChatGPT, so let's use that. Let's use this. Let's use this. And it's really choppy, and it's like this Band-Aid fix, right? My view on this is, guess what? We're in the midst of this AI adoption right now, but in 5 years, there's going to be another zinger that's thrown at us, whether it's quantum or robotics or something that's going to require us to adapt again. This isn't a one-time thing. So I think we all need to start thinking that this is just a continuum, right? We have to set ourselves up to constantly be adaptive and nimble. And I think that freaks people out. It just takes away that stability that I know what I'm going to do every day. I know this is my job. I've perfected it. I've been doing this for 20 years or whatever it is. And that's scary to people, right? Because they're afraid of becoming irrelevant. But to stay relevant, it's like that requires you to stay on top of all this and be adaptive. It's kind of a weird circle. But I am big on, helping people, organizations to change that mindset to, yes, let's answer those whys, but let's have a long-term outlook on this. So we're ready for the next change. Because wouldn't that be, it's just so ridiculous that, even going through COVID as if, I don't think we're going to have another pandemic in our lifetime, but we're going to have a big change. And here it is. And what do we learn from that change and adapting back then? Are we going to leverage what we learned? Are we going to keep moving forward? So these lessons, we need to tap into what we learned several years ago and just, set ourselves up to embrace more change. I don't know. I think I'm so weird. I love the disruption. With COVID, it was a lot of sadness and trauma. Obviously, I don't like that. But the fact that it required us to really change and adapt on a dime is pretty awesome. And sometimes it takes something massive like that to push people and to make them change. But in addition to my why, that why question, our why question, I would add that it's like, okay, folks, we need to look at this as an ongoing thing. This is not a one and done. This is the world we live in. Scary for people.
Yeah, I think you have to start to get into that mindset where you're excited about change. You're excited to see what happens next, because I think that's the only way to keep yourself on your toes enough to adapt to how quickly things are changing. I think you're spot on where it's like, yeah, right now it's AI. Next thing it's going to be quantum. Then it's going to be this. Then it's going to be that. Like, I just came back from a conference and, 2 years ago, all they were talking about was cryptocurrency and, blockchain. And that's going to be the next thing. And if you're not on top of that, like you're going to get left behind. And now it's AI. And go back a certain amount of years and it was the internet. It was phones. It was cars. It was cars is always my favorite example where I'm like, I wish I could. Ford, I think, was who said it, but he was like, at the time, if he had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses, and instead he gave them cars. And then, there's the moral panic over cars arrive, and it's like, there's accidents now, but also we can get places, things are more accessible. The infrastructure needs to be built out. All of these things that kind of come with that change. And it's kind of one of the things that I'm like, as a human race, we were able to adapt to that change. There isn't a lot that we can't adapt to if challenged with it. I think it just comes down to mindset and having that like, yeah, bring it on. Let's try it. Let's see what happens. The willingness to fail mindset is, I think, really important as well. And I think that's what makes a big difference between being positive about change and being scared of change, is being willing to fail. Like, lots of people at the beginning of the pandemic, to your point, didn't do it right. We were all sort of flailing in the dark. Like, let's see, I was in crisis communications at the time, and that was like a whole other, the whole other ball game. Cause it was like, okay, no, the word unprecedented was like the only word anyone could use. Cause we're like, we don't know. We've never had this level of closure. We've never had this level of change all at once. And we had to make that shift on a dime. We have a question.
Oh, we have a question from the audience.
Do we want to tackle that question? We have a question from the audience. How are you seeing this shift to future skills, and are we ahead of that need?
I'm going to say no, that we are not ahead of that. This is part of that resistance to change. There's a lot of talk around skills development, upskilling, digital transformation, workforce transformation. It's on everybody's radars, but again, there's no playbook for this. Like, there wasn't one for the internet or for the pandemic or for other like world crises like we're experiencing in the United States right now. I won't go down that path, but you got to start somewhere. But we have to move it from talking about things to actually taking action. And I can't say that as a blanket statement that, nobody or no organizations are are addressing the skills development. It's happening, but it has to be more mainstream. It has to be like everybody on board. And I'll use, again, education institutions. That's your job. That is your job, to prepare people with the right skill set for careers, not just of the future, but right now. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And so I'm going to say it takes people like us to help guide others, whether it's an entrepreneur or an educator or an institution, to, give them the tools and the steps and the why and the processes and everything to help them begin taking some action. That's what I was referring to earlier, about how last year, everyone's talking about AI and trying to soak it all up. And what is this? And blah, 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 and sitting around watching and waiting. And I did definitely see a shift to more doing and taking action as of the beginning of this year, 2026. But it's still slow because of a lot of the unknown. And I'm going to go back to, because people probably don't understand the why behind it all. Let's give Simon Sinek some props. Why? It's like a great book. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Sarah?
Great book, yeah. I mean, I think it's so hard to say, like, seeing this shift to future skills, and are we ahead of that? Because it's like, it's in the future, and we don't know I don't know what the next set of skills we're going to need is. For all we know, like, the next way to market yourself properly is going to be to stand on your head and shout on the street corners. And that's like the most effective way, because people don't want to hear from technology anymore. Marketing changes so fast. And that's where, like, so much of my expertise lives in, is it changes so fast, it adopts so quickly, that you kind of need to learn it on the fly. One of the things I say to new graduates a lot of the times is, I'm like, okay, amazing that you went to school and you learned how to learn, because that's what you're going to be doing for the rest of your career. Like, pretty much by the time you're out of school, we're on to the next thing. So you have to be ready to, like, get swept up in that wave and be constantly learning and changing and finding these new skills and things that come, and finding the resources. I think that's what higher education does such a good job of doing, is giving you the resources, being like, this is how you go out and you find your next thing that you're interested in. This is how you go and figure out the research. This is how you critically think. This is how you do the work that needs to be done, and learn the things that you need to learn to solve the problem you're being faced with now. And I think those skills we're working on as an overarching species. Like, we're constantly kind of working on that. I think it's the learn how to learn skill that's got to be the most important for any kind of future facing adoption or adaptation that you're looking at. It's I want to be able to learn how to learn, so that I can consistently learn new things and bring in skills as they arise, so that when the next big tech thing lands, I'm able to pick it up. When the next big world shift happens, I'm able to roll with it. I think that's so important. And maybe it's because I'm like you, where I'm like, change it up. I don't want it to stay still. I love change. I love it when things get disrupted. And that's something that drew me to advertising in the first place. I remember one of my first mentors, he's like, are you sure? Are you sure you want to go into advertising? I don't think I would want my own kids to go into advertising. And I was like, yep, no. And he's like, it's never the same. It's constantly changing. You feel like you're behind all the time. Like, you never feel like you're on the 8 ball. It's constant. And he's like, you can never be just like happy with where you're at. And I was like, that sounds great. And he's like, are you a little bit of a masochist, or like what?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I just think that, the disruption, the change, the constant ability to learn something new is so important and refreshing. And I love the fact that that's what I get to do in my job every day.
Agreed. One of the things, just to kind of put a cherry on top of this conversation, one of the things that I have learned and strongly believe in is that in order to get people to change their behavior, like learn those new skills, be open-minded enough to learn something, but to get them to change their behavior is a big ask, unless, they're able to answer that why question, but also there's this change in their mindset. And I actually published a book last year that that was the message. Let's rewire our mindsets about what learning can be, what's possible, what could it be? And if we got rid of all the constraints and barriers and how we look at learning as usual, what could it be? And again, I learned that over the years, in order to get people to adopt new technology, to adapt to new ways of being and working and thinking and learning, it has taken a step back fundamentally. And again, just you have to reshape how people are thinking and that mindset. That is hard, but it is a really key step in order to get it to lead to that behavioral change. I don't know if you've experienced that, but that's what I've learned firsthand. I really believe in, and I'm using that to help others embrace AI in this case.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say I see that all the time. And I agree. I think if I was going to give anyone sort of a takeaway from this conversation, I would be like, think about your mindset. What's your why? And are you in the right place right now to be in that sort of lifelong learning, ready to adapt, ready to change, ready to roll with the punches mindset? And if you're not, like, what steps can you take to get to that place? Because personally, I think that's a great place to be in. And that's the place you almost need to be in order to kind of keep up with the pace of change that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, actually, that's the skill people need. It's not necessarily a hard skill. It is being resilient, being adaptive. That's the skill. Ding, ding, ding. And that's why we're here talking about this and so passionate about this.
We nailed it. Got there in the end.
Absolutely. So fun having this conversation. Let's keep it going, Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely. So great chatting with you today, Chris. This was awesome.
We really do appreciate our guests' contribution to the topics and their dedication to being on the podcast. One of our guests had only had a few hours sleep as she just returned from a trip. Remember, the journey of adaptation is ongoing, and it's important to remain open to new ideas and opportunities. A huge thank you to Christine and Sarah for their time, and you'll find all their details along with links to the subjects they spoke about in the show notes. We are still looking for guests for upcoming episodes, and if you'd like to find out more, then please do email us. Remember to like and subscribe to the podcast on your podcast player. It really does make a difference in helping people find and recommend us. We're back in a couple of weeks. Next time it's The Graduate One. As always, thanks for listening, and we'll see you again soon.